Today, we're diving into a really fascinating analysis of Germany's delicate balancing act in a rapidly changing world. It's a story about quiet political shifts, economic pressures, and something the source material calls the transatlantic leash.
Okay, so check this out. It all kicks off with two speeches from a top German politician, Friedrich Merz. In the middle of January, he says Russia is a permanent neighbor, which kind of implies you have to find a way to coexist. But then, just 6 days later at Davos, the message completely flips. Suddenly, Russia is a threat that needs to be contained at all costs.
I mean, that's not just a small change in tone. That is a complete U-turn. So you have to ask yourself, what on earth happened in those 6 days to cause such a whiplash-inducing reversal?
Well, the analysis we're digging into here suggests the answer isn't that he just changed his mind. It points to this really powerful concept the author calls the transatlantic leash, these invisible but incredibly strong forces that keep German and really all European policy aligned with Washington.
So what is this leash exactly? It's not some formal command structure, not at all. Think of it more like a powerful, almost gravitational pull from the transatlantic alliance. It's this deep network of security and political systems that just naturally discourages European countries from stepping too far out of line or pursuing real strategic independence.
So how does it actually work in the real world? Well, it's maintained through very concrete things, right? U.S. military bases on European soil, deeply integrated intelligence sharing, and, just plain old peer pressure within the alliance. And it gets reinforced at big events like the Davos Forum, which this analysis calls consensus rituals, where any deviation from the accepted script is, let's say, quietly corrected.
And that brings us to this crucial point. According to this analysis, Merz's big reversal wasn't about him being inconsistent. It's seen as an act of corrective pressure. He wasn't really changing his mind. He was being reminded of the rules of the game and who the referee is.
But here's where it gets really interesting. While that leash is pulling from the outside, there are these powerful forces pushing back from within Germany itself, and they're challenging the entire status quo in a way that's becoming impossible to ignore.
And this really gets to the heart of the growing divide in German politics. You've got the mainstream parties on one side framing the conflict in Ukraine in very moral terms. It's all about values, democracy, and solidarity. But on the other side, you have the rising AfD party, which reframes the entire debate around cost, proximity, and national interest. They don't moralize, they calculate.
And listen, this is no longer some fringe movement we're talking about. By securing about a fifth of the national vote, the AfD has become a major structural force in German politics. And their arguments about the cost of all this are finding a lot of traction, especially in Eastern Germany, a region that's been hit really hard by deindustrialization, and now soaring energy costs.
You see, this political pressure is being cranked up by some very real economic pain. The entire German economic model was basically built on 3 pillars: cheap Russian gas, massive exports to places like China, and pretty modest defense spending. Right now, all 3 of those pillars are either cracked or completely broken, which creates this powerful structural reason to rethink everything from the ground up.
And all of this is being stress-tested right now, in real time, with Ukraine's ambitious bid to join the European Union. This is the moment where all the high-minded rhetoric smacks right into hard reality.
So you have President Zelensky declaring that Ukraine will be ready for EU membership by 2027, framing it almost as a moral imperative. But then Germany, with Merz as the spokesperson again, immediately hits the institutional brake, saying very clearly, no shortcuts. And then, of course, Hungary's Orban just calls the whole thing out of the question.
And according to this analysis, Germany's position here signals a really major shift. Public support for Ukraine is no longer just running into a bit of hesitation. It's now hitting the hard, bureaucratic wall of institutional reality. It's a quiet but very firm no.
So, where does all this leave Germany, and by extension Europe? Well, it seems like the consensus that held everything together for so long is clearly fraying at the edges, even if it hasn't totally broken apart yet. That transatlantic leash, it's under some serious strain.
Now, the key takeaway here isn't that some massive policy reversal is about to happen tomorrow. It's actually something much more subtle. It's that the old certainties, the automatic alignments that defined an entire era, they're starting to erode.
And these are the signals to keep an eye on. Ideas that were totally taboo are now being spoken out loud, even if they get walked back quickly. The political opposition isn't a marginal voice anymore. It's a structural part of the system. And those economic pressures, they're not going away. If anything, they're only getting tighter.
So, for now, the leash is still holding Germany firmly in its transatlantic alignment. But as this analysis concludes, all that pressure on the leash is just accumulating right beneath the surface, building up quietly until the next crack inevitably appears.
And this leaves us with the final and maybe the most crucial question that the analysis poses. Will Europe, and Germany in particular, choose to chart its own course, to adapt consciously and deliberately, or will it just drift along, forced to change only when the current path becomes completely economically and politically unsustainable? The answer to that is going to define the future of the entire continent.